to class. So today we are going to be talking about different interventions for students with learning disabilities. So, beginning with diversity. There's always going to be diversity in the classroom, no matter what classroom you're in. And with diversity comes learning disabilities. And the big question is, how should teachers handle these learning disabilities in the classroom? Well, learning disabilities should not be viewed as a disadvantage. Instead, they should be viewed as an opportunity. An opportunity for you, the teacher, to show your amazing teaching skills and to help everyone in your diverse classroom learn, no matter if they have a disability or not. So first of all, what is a learning disability? Well, a learning disability can be anything from a student having difficulty reading, difficulty with math, writing, language, or fine motor skills. And today we're going to talk about two different types of interventions that you can apply into your classroom that will help students with learning disabilities. The first one is the IQ Achievement Discrepancy Model. And this model identifies learning disabilities and it helps students get back on track. The second model is the Response to Intervention Model, or the RTI model. And this model also identifies students with learning disabilities, but instead of just helping them get back on track, it helps them prevent the learning disabilities from ever occurring in the first place. So the question is, which model is better? So let's take a look at some of the major differences between the IQ Achievement Discrepancy Model and the RTI model. With the IQ Achievement Discrepancy Model, students often struggle for years before they're identified, and it often fails to identify students in the younger grades. Also with this model, qualifying for a disability and getting special help requires a difference of 2 standard deviations on an individualized test, and it does not take into account the quality instruction that the student received before taking the test to determine their learning disability. However, with the RTI model, it's a little different. This model, as I said before, tries to prevent learning difficulties before they ever even occur. And it's a multi-level approach with 3 tiers. Skills are monitored looking for adequate growth following high-quality instruction, which is an important part. Small intensive groups are formed, sometimes with a teacher and sometimes with specialists, to help students who are at risk of struggling in the future, particularly in reading. So now let's stop and think. Based on what you know from this PowerPoint so far, which model do you think is better at addressing and finding learning disabilities in students? Which model do you think? If you said the RTI model, you are correct, because this model prevents learning difficulties. Its goal is to prevent learning difficulties, and students are monitored following high-quality instruction, and small intensive groups are formed to help students who do qualify for learning difficulties. So now let's take a look at the structure of the RTI model. This model includes 3 tiers. The higher the tier, the smaller the group of students. And the higher the tier, the more work that is done in the area of difficulty. This model also uses a systematic approach which monitors students' progress, provides instructional modification, and intensified services to struggling students. Teachers, specialists, special education students, special education teachers all come together to help these students so that they don't struggle later in the higher grades. And the goals for this model are, with pre-K through 3rd grade, to prevent the learning difficulty, particularly in reading. But if that doesn't happen for a student in pre-K through 3rd grade for whatever reason, then in 4th through 12th grade, the goal of the model is to rescue the struggling learners and help them overcome their struggles. So let's take a look at each tier particularly. Tier 1 is differentiated instruction given by the general education teacher. So it'd be the normal teacher giving her normal lesson to her whole entire class. It's based on the core curriculum, and it meets the needs of a majority of the class. So 80 to 85% of the class is going to benefit and learn from Tier 1. It also serves as a gate to other services, such as the services I was talking about before with the special education teacher or the sometimes the teacher with students in small groups. Now let's take a look at Tier 2. Tier 2 builds off of Tier 1 instruction, and it's offered to approximately the 15% of students in the class who did not benefit and meet the learning goals after receiving the instruction in Tier 1. It's extra instruction delivered in small groups, normally by the teacher, sometimes by a specialist or maybe a helper in the class. And the students receive extra help in the area of learning, normally around 30 minutes extra every day. And the third tier is based off of Tier 2 instruction, and it's for the students who didn't benefit from Tier 1 or Tier 2. It provides extra help to smaller groups, or individual students, normally by, at this tier, a specialist or a special education teacher, and it's offered to about the 5 to 10% of students who did not benefit from Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction and are still having difficulty in the area, and it's normally in the area of reading that the RTI model focuses on. So now with every model, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. So we're going to look at what the RTI model's advantages and disadvantages are. The advantages of the RTI model are that it increases academic achievement. It provides early intervention to students who are struggling, and it provides immediate intervention to students who are at risk of failure, which would be the 4th through 12th grade students. And the biggest thing with this model is that students don't have to fail before they receive help, which is a lot of times what other models do, is that they wait for the students to fail before they provide them with help. But the RTI model doesn't make the students fail first. It grabs those struggling students and takes them into its hand and helps them with their learning difficulty before they start failing in a subject. So the disadvantages of the RTI model are that it mainly focuses on reading, and it fails to focus on other areas that students may be struggling with, such as math, science, history. And it doesn't always work well for English language learners, because English language learners normally have difficulty reading in the first place, so even with the extra help at Tier 2 and Tier 3, it's not always enough for them, and they may need more. So let's stop and think again. How can you as teachers get rid of some of these disadvantages? What could we do to solve some of these problems? So some possible answers are that with the RTI model, you could implement it in anything. It doesn't have to be implemented for just reading. You can implement it within the math section of your teaching, the science, history. And also with English language learners, if you have multiple English language learners in your class that are struggling, place them into a group together with a specialist or that can help them with even more advanced help than the RTI model offers. So overall, evidence shows that RTI is a better approach than the IQ achievement discrepancy model. So start implementing it in your classrooms today. And that is the end of my presentation.